Welcome to the Why Not podcast with me, Chrissy Hawkins. In a world where everybody always asks why, I'm here to ask, why not? I'll be breaking down the mindsets of guests as well as my own in a bid to find out what makes people say, why not? Hello guys and welcome back to Why Not. So today I have an interview which I'm very excited to bring to you, and it is with Paul Dermody. So Paul, we also talk about, kindly did this interview all the way from Vietnam with me. He is an online coach who works predominantly with quite overweight people and makes amazing transformations with them. Now he calls himself more of a health coach now as opposed to a PT, because most of these people have actually made their changes without going to the gym. So we do have a bit of a chat about that, about how when it comes to weight loss you have to dig deeper than just the surface reason you want it. One thing Paul does as well is he uses a money analogy a lot when it comes to food, and I thought this is really good because it really explains it really well. So how people underestimate the minute changes that can make the really biggest difference as opposed to focusing on hard, intense training. Anyway, guys, let's sit back and relax or walk and listen. But either way, enjoy this episode with Paul Dermody. Hey guys, and welcome back to the Why Not podcast. Today I have got Paul Dermody with me. So Paul is an online coach and personal trainer, or as he says himself, the fairy godmother of Ho Chi Minh City. So I'm going to let Paul introduce himself a little bit, and welcome to the podcast, Paul. How are you?
That was sarcastic. I can't believe you hung me out to dry with that one. I'm fantastic. I would say how are you, but we spent the last couple of minutes exchanging pleasantries. But yes, I'm doing very well. Did you ask me for a little introduction?
Yeah, if you want to give me a little background of who you are, where you're from, how you became fairy godmother as well, maybe.
How I became the fairy godmother. First, I might go into how I got into the fitness industry, and then I'll exchange the story on that one. I am from Galway. I am 31 years of age. I live in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam, and my career is based on the online fitness or health world. I actually wouldn't associate the word fitness with me per se anymore, because when I think fitness, I think of a genuine, like legit fitness goals of taking your physique or figure as far as you can take it. I more like to specialize in general health, general well-being, weight management, a lot of overweight to a more generally healthy weight management. I have a lot of clients, for example, losing 70, 80, 100 pounds with actually no gym protocols. So almost more on the behavioral element around food and the psychological element, as well as the practical element of things as well. That's kind of the area I not exclusively, but like to specialize in, as well as a smattering of other kinds of clients. And I do it full time. I do a little bit of one-to-one personal training here in Ho Chi Minh with a very small client base, deliberately so, but I love it because one thing I've learned about going online is you will miss that human connection. I can promise you that. So I found a lovely little client base when I was here, which has been wonderful for me because it keeps me going nicely in person. I used to live in Barcelona, where I had a similar experience. I was trying to build my online client base and had a one-person in-person client base there too. And I've been doing it full time for the last this is year 6, give or take. So fully online for 3 years, with the exception obviously of the one-to-one clients here, but online coach by trade so I can move around. Personal trainer full time for that 3 years prior. And it has taken me all the way to this moment where we are chatting right now.
Yeah, that's cool. How did you actually end up coming over to Thailand, isn't it?
Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam.
Yeah. Vietnam. Yeah.
So Vietnam. I initially wanted to move to a sunny climate. I've always wanted to, ever since I was young, and I never took the risk. And then in 2018, I said to my girlfriend, let's move to Spain. She was willing to try it. She didn't want to settle there. I think it was the language barrier. So logically, we did what any couple would do when they are slightly struck, if you will, or stricken, or it impedes them. The language barrier impedes them. And we went to Ho Chi Minh City. We actually only went here because the climate was my only reason to leave Ireland, mostly, and adventure, a smattering of other reasons, but adventure. And my girlfriend wanted to feel comfortable and get a good job. And there was just some really good opportunities in the expat part of Ho Chi Minh City. lots of international schools hiring. My girlfriend's a teacher. She had some friends here already doing cool things and living good lives. And it's 30 degrees year round here. So it suited both of our needs.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. So do you have less of a language barrier in Vietnam than you did in Spain?
Well, I speak Spanish. I didn't
Yeah.
at the time. I do now. I've been learning with the intention of settling in Spain, but now we're not going to settle in Spain. We're here in Asia and very happily here in Asia. There's such a strong expat community here in Ho Chi Minh that you will have no problem integrating. There's loads of English speakers. There's loads of different nationalities. Everyone seems to speak English. A lot of the Vietnamese people speak English as well. So a lot of us expats, fortunately or otherwise, live in this little bubble in a part of Ho Chi Minh City. If you go further out into the city, nobody speaks English. It's very more traditional Ho Chi Minh, more traditional Vietnamese, pardon, which I still love as well. So there's no barrier in terms of the languages out here. Most people anyway tend to speak a little bit of English.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it hasn't been that bad, but I'd be fine in Spain if I go back. I'm at a relatively conversational Spanish level now.
Oh, that's cool. We've actually started to try and do
Yeah.
that a bit, Spanish recently, and I learned different languages for the crack on Duolingo. And
Oh, nice.
so basically, the last time we tried to do Thursday evening, we'd talk to each other, and my boyfriend was like trying really hard, and I was like, "See." That was as far as I was going. It's like I've forgotten how to speak Spanish.
Are you planning on learning a bit more, or is it just for a bit of fun?
It's just a bit of fun. I started this thing years ago with a friend. I had a bet that I could learn Italian quicker than he could learn violin, and he never bothered picking up a violin. Like he's got a music degree and stuff, so it wasn't a random thing. And then every time I was going away for the last while, I spent a bit of time learning the languages. So I had Spanish at one point. We went to Mexico 2 years ago, but I've forgotten it. And then I moved. The most recent one I started doing was Russian, just for the crack, because I wanted a really hard challenge.
That certainly will satisfy the challenge part. It's a different alphabet, isn't it?
Yeah, it's actually really easy to learn spoken, but written, it's gibberish like.
I'll be leaving you to that one. That sounds just a bridge too far for me.
Yeah. It's a bit of crack though. It's something fun, like, and it probably shows how much of a nerd I can be if I do that for fun.
Hey, it keeps you intellectually sharp and it keeps you young. You're striking 30 soon. You'll need to keep
Yeah.
that brain keeping sharp, I tell you, because it's you're afraid it's all downhill from here, aren't you?
Well, you said it's grand after 31, so I'm feeling a bit better now.
31's the best. I can't wait for 32.
You'll have to fill me in, like.
Just slightly more mature, slightly less ignorance, more content, more relaxed, less of a shit given, more spiritual.
Oh, that's good. That's what you want, though, isn't it?
I suppose it's more spiritual if that's what you choose. I'm sure there are a lot of highly strung 32-year-olds on the planet.
Definitely. A lot of people I know are will be that now.
Yeah, and not for me. I want a nice, relaxed. I want to be the person who does his thing, builds his business, has a good life, and does it all in a very calm, peaceful manner with no regrets.
Have you not got everyone now because you're 31 going like, you gonna come back and settle down and get a mortgage, or did I know you better by now?
Nah, everyone knows me better by now. They know I wouldn't listen. Nobody's giving me that stuff. I can't, when people say that, and they do say it, and it's very valid. I can relate, but I would actually have a bit of a different philosophy there. It's people get annoyed when people say that to them, and to the degree at which I choose to, I can kind of see it. But it's not your job to guess my boundaries. It's my job to communicate them clearly. So if you say it to me, you're 31 and you should come home, I'll politely tell you that's not my goal. And then if you keep saying it to me, I'll might have to remove myself from your company if that's the case. But I think everybody should have strong boundaries.
Do you think that's a big struggle people have?
I do. Yeah, I do. I kind of see. I don't have much of a theoretical background in this. This is just something that spending a lot of time around people who are relatively self-aware has taught me that I consider, and I'm aware that this could be wrong, but I consider my values to be what I absolutely want and my boundaries to be what I won't tolerate. And it's my job then to communicate them to people that I love in my life, so that nobody, like you could say to me, do you want children? Do you want to move home? Do you want to get a mortgage? And I think they're very valid questions. I don't really see why I'd get upset about that. But repeatedly, I mean, I get it, because it does remind a lot of people that perhaps they're not in the positions in life they thought they'd be or they want to be by 30, 31, 32. But, instead of pointing the finger out, I like to point it back in. And because I have a relatively aware idea of what I want from life, those questions don't bother me. That and the fact my best mates and my parents know that I was never really going to. My dad joked the other day, "You were really never going to do conventional, were you?" And it's kind of true.
Well, that's good though. It's good that they're not pushing you. Probably you communicated that to them at this stage, and they respect it basically.
My parents are very kind people, very open-minded. They're not what you would expect for two 70-something-year-old Irish people. So progressive, so open-minded. My best friends are just fantastic. They're just really chill. I'm a very lucky boy. I have a really good circle and network of people, and even my client base. My client base are a really nice group of human beings. I really like them all. Every one of them are really sound. So I'm lucky that from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed, anyone who can contact me and communicate with me, I generally like him. It's a really, really nice place to be.
Yeah. Actually, speaking of your clients, how did you end up working with the type of client that you work with?
I don't know precisely, if I'm telling you the truth. I really don't know how I did it, because initially my goal was to be physique and that kind of photo shoot physique competitor shape. That was the initial reason I started fitness. Then when I became a personal trainer, it kind of flipped, because I didn't have the best experience dieting to those lean conditions, that I wanted to just blog about what a mentally difficult period it was post physique competition when I did that. But for whatever reason, my message, my blogging, my posts, my articles were landing with yo-yo dieters, not people like me per se, even though you could say I was doing yo-yo dieting just at a more extreme level. And I just got very lucky. My first client lost whatever it was, 50 pounds. My second, she lost about 60 pounds. I think my third lost over 100. And then I had a smattering of other clients who wouldn't have been as striking a visual transformation as, say, Instagram and Facebook would celebrate, but still enough that reputation and word spread around my city that I was working in. So I actually didn't have a particularly difficult time building up a client base at an early age in my career, because I got very lucky with the kind of people that I worked with immediately. And from there, it just kind of spread. I a couple of transformation pictures kind of go, if you like, viral, if you want, or feature in newspapers, radios, other fitness pages. And it just built from there. And I always had the mentality that if you were, even at a young age or young in your career, if you had 10 to 20 clients, at whatever rate you charge per session or per month, all you needed to do was just have a roof over your head and food in your belly. And that was a successful life to me when I was starting. That was all I wanted, a job I liked. I think I do consider myself to be slightly different in that aspect, that I wasn't afraid of that situation whatsoever. I think a lot of people are afraid of having no money and having a little bit of uncertainty in their life. I thrived. I genuinely thrived, because I think that's how you get strong and resilient. So I was very lucky. I thought to myself, if I get 8 clients, such and such an amount of money, that'll cover my rent and my food, and I don't need anything else. And it just started to build. I've had 1 or 2 clients have fairly nuts transformations that have been in. I remember one day I was on RT2 FM, and I think business doubled the next day. Literally, the amount of clients that I had just pretty much doubled overnight. And I've had a couple of moments in my career that have gone very well, and then it's just been building and building from there. So there's no specific reason how I have the client base that I have, other than the kind that like what I'm about, and the kind that don't, and that's perfectly reasonable.
I think it's the way, though, your manner with people as well definitely helps.
I have been told that, and I think it's very kind, but and I don't even know sometimes what it means. I always say, when I get nice feedback about anything in my personality, it's just it's the influence of my older sister and my parents. They're the one who influenced my thinking. They're really kind, really, really selfless, compassionate humans. And I find myself often saying, what would my parents do? What would my sister do when I'm confronted with a situation or an issue? Because I'm a little bit more snappy and sharp. I'm half compassionate, and I'm a genuinely very compassionate person, but also the other half of me is get the fuck on with it. That's my 2 halves of my personality. Whereas my parents and my sister are more compassion, and I don't think get the fuck on with it would even be in the vocabulary. So I've taken a lot from them to counterbalance that. My internal self-talk is, Paulie, get up, get on with it, stop being a fuckface. So it's both. But thank you, by the way. I assume you were about to say a nice thing about the manner thing, so thank you for that.
Yeah, no, like it's I suppose I follow you, so I see a lot of your content and the way you word stuff. It's there's a lot of compassion in a lot of it, like, you know, so it's really good. Whereas, like you said, a lot of people might be like, get the fuck on with it all the time. So
It's true, and I kind of have the philosophy that, you know, if you went to a therapist and you said, I don't know if this is a false comparison, I really don't. I've been thinking about this for a couple of years. If you went to a therapist and said, look, I'm struggling here, and someone said, get on with it. This is exactly what you do it. You know, don't come back next week without these things done. You'd be 5 minutes out the door before you'd be thinking, what kind of person have I just visited? And I don't actually think nutrition is that different. Now, I mean, there's two kind of sides to this. You could be exactly where you want to be and you want to get leaner or sharper or shredded or stronger, and you might be a piece of knowledge away from that goal. That's when you might need a really good trainer to come in and say, do X, Y, and Z, and you'll get there. And that's fine. That's totally reasonable. But let's say you're someone with a turbulent diet history and a very damaged relationship with food, and someone who really is falling into all sorts of cognitive traps and all sorts of thought spirals. You do need that person to come along and say, look, what you are going through right now is valid. It's absolutely valid. The reactions that you choose might not be. The emotion is. You might believe your false sense of knowledge, if you will, or your false thoughts about this project way too much, too deep. Let's chat. Like, where are you at? And I've really seen people get much more comfortable with that approach, to open up and tell things. And I've had a lot of deeper conversations, far deeper than I ever thought I would have, about things like assault, traumas, you know, childhoods, lack of trust, even just busy, stressful lives, lack of confidence, things that you may not even imagine as a personal trainer, certainly starting a career. And I actually do think in society, in a lot of our complex conversations, and whether it's things like societal equality or inequalities or relationships with food, I think we're having a conversation at a slightly surface level in almost everything. I think we need to go one level deeper, two level deeper with most conversations. We talk a lot about the how, well, this is a good diet, this amount of calories, and I'm just not seeing that that's the issue. I'm really not. I'm seeing more, well, yes, you might decide to go from points and sins to calories in the context of dieting, but if you still have that pass, fail, fuck it, success mindset, then you haven't actually addressed the thinking, the cognitive trap you might be falling into. You've just replaced a crash fad diet that you're bound to fail with now a more evidence-based approach that you're also setting you up for quote unquote failure because of your black and white nature. So I'm really noticing that a lot of conversations need to go much deeper. Most solutions are much more complex than the simple answers than a lot of people have. And I think it's about respect for the individual. And I say respect for the individual, and I mean that deeply, but also to a degree, challenging people, like really putting that healthy amount of pressure on them to address, you know, why is it you think the way you do? Why? Where did you learn that? How do you know it's true? Just things like that, and really try work together to come up with a very practical solution.
Do you get a lot of resistance from clients when you do try to probe deeper?
Sometimes, yes, but most people are very willing to be critiqued. I think it's how you do it. I think it's, you know, there's an idea that that I don't think we explore deep enough, that when you want change, there's always going to be an element of ambivalence, and that basically, as far as I understand it, is there's going to be talk about change and also the talk or fear of sustain. So you might want a certain outcome, but also not do the actions that would take you closer to that outcome. And I think a lot of people fear being judged for that. I think that's very normal. I mean, for example, I am planning on tightening up my nutrition again. I do this sporadically, and immediately my thing is, oh, like what happens on Friday night when I go for a few pints? And I've had these irrational thoughts that now I'm very good and I'm very grounded with them, but they definitely come, and I have to sit with them for a moment and think, you're falling into a trap. The very reason you started this business 6-7 years ago was because you're now falling into the same trap you want to climb out of. And I can sit with it and I can accept it and I can see it for what it's worth. And I observe and I pay attention to it. And even for me, for example, I want certain changes in my life. And I also want the comfort of sustaining and not having to change. And it's a real sense of two conflicting feelings at the same time. That's normal. What I would say is set yourself some standards. Who am I? And what are my standards? And how am I going to achieve that kind of standard? And how am I going to be the kind of person that would have that kind of result or that kind of outcome worth having? How would I be someone worth aspiring to, or someone who has traits worth aspiring to? And I do think when you start talking to other people with that element of, I want you to feel safe to have an adult conversation with me, I'll never judge you, but the conversation in and of itself might be challenging, then I do think you set the tone for very, very good communication. I think when people feel judged is when they refuse to open up to you.
So you were saying at start as well, when you bring clients in, it's kind of like health changes as opposed to like gym workouts and stuff. Are they surprised the difference they can make with small changes?
100%. That's a great question. Absolutely. I've had many people lose 50, 60, 80 pounds without ever touching a gym or a barbell once. Yesterday, one of my ladies checked in 70 odd pounds down, and she's going to start a gym workout for the first time. Another one of my ladies is 75 pounds down, and she's only been resistance training for the past couple of months. Exercise in and of itself is a great tool, but it's only a tool that I encourage people to see as something to create a specific adaptation on the body. And as much as I know the sun will come up tomorrow, I know this kind of advice will get ignored because people have already kind of made up their minds about certain things. Exercise, if you want to get stronger, do a specific exercise that makes you stronger. If you want to become fitter, do a specific exercise that makes you fitter. If you want to be better at tennis, practice tennis. Pardon me. If you want to be better at boxing, practice boxing. But in and of itself, those exercises will not do anything for your fat loss goals in the absence of some form of caloric deficit. So what I encourage people to do is be very choosy in why or how much they exercise, because it's an adaptation. And if I have someone who wants to lose 80 pounds, try a HIIT home workout, which is kind of YouTube stuff, or even just too difficult of a resistance session, they're sore for 3 days. So they might go from doing nothing to 40 minutes of resistance work, which is fine. I mean, amazing if you're looking to be stronger. But if you're sore for 3 days, then your NEAT activity, your non-exercise activity, your step count, your movement comes down, you're shortchanging yourself in your fat loss goals. And I don't think enough people, and I don't mind that now, it's up to you. As long as you understand the consequence, you do your thing. But the fact that people, and I've had clients come to me from experiences where they've gone to a personal trainer 3 times a week, and the trainer's been great. The personal trainer's been fantastic, and they've been very good and very, very caring on form and stuff. But they've been saying, why am I getting results? And I'm asking, well, what are you looking for? Stronger thighs and stronger thighs on the leg press? Like, no, fat loss. I'm saying that's the wrong tool for the wrong approach. Your exercise is making you stronger and it's creating an adaptation of your body. Amazing, fantastic. But fat loss is impossible in and of itself without a deficit. How's your nutrition? How's your sleep? How's your step count and general NEAT activity? And these are things that are genuinely not very much considered by people. People have this misconception, if I go to the gym and batter myself and exhaust myself with infinite amounts of exercise, I'm going to be in shape in the last 2 to 3 weeks because of the nature of that kind of stimulus, not because they're failures. I mean, I can't do that much high intensity work anymore at the ripe, sprightly age of 31 because my joints can't take it anymore. So know why you do what you do is such an important tool. And I simplify it, and it is oversimplification, but it's a nice way to remember it to clients at the start by saying, if you want to lose body fat, that will come down to nutrition and all factors that relate and govern nutrition, like sleep and being well rested and not having decision fatigue. But ultimately, it's nutrition. If you want to burn a few extra calories, get out for a walk. Do something low impact that has low recovery demands that you can do every day that keeps you sharp. And if you want to create a specific adaptation in the body, do some exercise for that adaptation. I did pull-ups today, not for fat loss. I did pull-ups to be better at pull-ups. They are not the same goal. They're not. Now, there might be a correlation between people who exercise and lose fat, because obviously you'd be a health-seeking individual, and that's fine, that's great, but it's not causing it. Because if I do my pull-ups and eat too many calories, then I'm going the opposite of the goal. So I would really encourage people, especially people who are very busy and people who don't love exercise and don't love the fitness lifestyle and don't want to live like their personal trainer, be aware that body fat loss is energy breakdown, energy transfer. It has nothing to do with touching a dumbbell or a barbell, nothing. It's to do with how would you break down energy from one form to another, i.e. body fat into carbon dioxide to the body. So yeah, a lot of people are very, very, very surprised at how we call it underwhelming and unspectacular. My community of people call it unspectacular. And when it lands, oh my God, this is so unspectacular. Are you sure this works? This doesn't feel as torturous as the other diets have done. I'll say, but that's what it's about. If you want to buy a new iPhone in 50 weeks, let's not try and save 99% of your salary, remortgage the house, sell the kids, and sell our bodies. Why don't we put 20 quid into a bank account over a year, and in 1 year, that 20 quid that doesn't feel like anything coming out of your bank account will be €1,000. And I really think fat loss is almost in and of itself the same. You create a sustainable amount of change you're willing to do, standardize some habits, create structure. Structures, routine is the thing we all need. And you will be surprised at the kind of results that happen. And if you play the patience game, it'll happen.
Do you find your clients are ready to be patient in a sense, because they are making like kind of not extreme changes, but like long-term proper changes? Like it's like someone who's losing 5 pounds is a bit more than someone who's end up going to lose 60. Do you know what I mean? They kind of hit a point where they're ready to try something.
I do. I think from the flavor of the podcast that I have and the flavor of the posts that I put out and my very detailed introductory letter when people apply for coaching, I think people 99% of the time know what they're getting from me. You'll obviously have the odd person that slips through the cracks whereby there's no chemistry or you don't fit. But yeah, I think now at this stage of my career, a lot of people know what to expect from me precisely, whether it's on my posts, my podcasts, my personality, my stories. And I try and be very honest and transparent with people. I'm never, ever, ever going to tell you what to do. If you ask for my advice, I will give it. But ultimately, I want you to be aware of the consequences of your decisions. I can tell you, don't have unprotected sex without telling you why. Or I could tell you that there are potential consequences to unprotected sex, and you should be aware of those, and you can choose with whom and when to have sex in your personal life. And I really think that's an appropriate analogy. I think a lot of diet plans are telling us do or don't have sex and what time, without any knowledge on why you would do it, what your personal interests are, and the potential consequences and upsides of a sexual life. I genuinely think it's a solid analogy for dieting. I would much rather say, look, here's the consequences of your potential actions. If you're happy, fantastic. That's the name of the game. If you're not, let's reevaluate. Let's create structure. Let's know why we do something. Certain questions that are incomplete. Can I eat or should I eat X and Y? And genuinely, without sounding like the smart arse, like, I don't know. Can you? Wow. How could I know that? Can I use the loo at 6 p.m.? What if I don't need to go? Like, what if I'm it's these things are complex. And I think as soon as people understand and go one level deeper, like I said earlier, understand the concept and the principle, then they won't be needing to ask schmucks like me questions on the internet about what they can and cannot do. And that's very freeing for them.
Yeah. Did they struggle with this still? Like, I still think it sits around, but the good food, bad food when they first come on board with you?
Sometimes it depends. I think a lot of really good trainers now are saying that message. And, I think it's a wonderful message. I think if you are a trainer spreading that message, power to you. It needs context, obviously. There's no good food, bad food, but obviously then within context that what you eat will affect how much you eat. So perhaps don't have donuts for breakfast. Perhaps eat porridge oats or eggs on toast for breakfast, because you're essentially establishing your palate for the day. And that's a suggestion I would make. And I would actually encourage a lot of people to standardize breakfast and almost have the same breakfast every day. If you eat 3 or 4 times a day, that's 21 or 28 times a week. If you standardize breakfast, you've taken a quarter or a third of your meals and taken away the guesswork and taken away the kind of thought around it. Then you just have to, keep the structure and routine of the other meals. And then you can create a little bit of flexibility. What's the harm if you have a spontaneous sandwich or a few pints or a chocolate bar? It takes that away. But if your diet is all chocolate bars, all sandwiches, all fried foods, you don't have a bad food, you now have a bad diet, and they're not the same thing. The devil's in the detail. If you can't live a life without spending money, that's not a bad thing. That's a ridiculous thing to say. But if your life and your salary is only spending and zero saving, you now have a bad budget. The money's not the problem. It's your attitude to the money that's the problem. And I think that's kind of the same with good food, bad food. The food was never the problem, but the overall picture of the diet then becomes the issue. And it's one that can be changed easily. I always kind of think people say they need a new diet, and I don't agree. We look at your diet right now and we think, okay, yeah, it's devoid of nutrients. There's nothing green and there's far too many calories. And I don't think there's enough protein. And if we say, could you put in a little bit more protein? And could you put in something a bit more green, like fruit and veg? And as soon as people do that, immediately the diet quality improves, which technically means it's likely calories go down. And instead of having a new diet, we have immediately improved the quality of the diet and taken down calories within a couple of days. And that's often enough, in my experience, to get people to buy in. Not always, there are specific psychological behavioral aspects that we need to cater for. And I respect that more than anyone. But if you're ready, and if you're in that place to change, perhaps it's the false dichotomy of off the diet, on the diet. That's the biggest factor and the biggest limiting factor. When in truth, if you get away from that mentality and get more into I don't need to diet, I just need to adjust my nutrition so I can stop dieting. I think that's a much more freeing mindset.
So it's more like you're adding things to, instead of, say, you're sneakily putting them in a calorie deficit.
Inclusion over exclusion. I think you're spot on. You said something very wise there. It is adding things. I think inclusion over exclusion. Don't think what you can't have. Think what you'd like to have. What would you like to be? If I asked you, what would you like to be in a year? Who would you like to be? You don't think, oh, well, I'm not this, and I'm not this, and I'm not this, and I'm not this. And, there's 999 million things on the planet that you're not. But there's like 9 or 4 things that you are, and 3 strengths that you have. Focus on those. Like, think about that and think about who you could be in a year. And I mean that. That's a lot of how I live my life. I do very much character reevaluation on myself often, and I think what I like about myself, what I don't like about myself, and I try and trim the edges away. And I'm constantly doing it to try and be a better person and a better man and a better trainer and a better human and a better boyfriend. And if I focus on all the stuff I'm bad at or all my limitations, I'd be here all day. We could go, that's a rabbit hole. Things Paul doesn't know and is bad at. That's a long list. But the 4 things that I happen to be decent at, I could build my. And I think more inclusion of that, more inclusion. And I think, again, silly analogy, it's the same with dieting. Stop thinking I can't have chocolate. Instead, think, what could I include to satiate me and nourish me so that when I do reach for chocolate, it's because I genuinely want it, not because I'm doing it out of a quick sugar fix.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Do you give people calorie goals a lot, or would it be more kind of just tweaking
Not
the
really.
diet?
No, not really. I don't really give calorie goals anymore. Again, I know a lot of great trainers do, and I'm not saying they shouldn't. That's not what I'm implying with this at all. But certainly in my experience and my bias, it has the tendency, without the context of conversation, to promote more falsely dichotomous thinking. Well, if I don't hit my 1806 calories, it's fucked. Wrong. But that's not to say calorie goals don't work. Like, Jesus, they absolutely do, and I get it. And I have given them. I just don't necessarily give them. And more people don't than do get them from me. So I've actually had 1 or 2 clients that have gotten a bit short with me and a bit angry and a bit aggressive, saying, I thought I'd be told what to do. And I have to very politely refer them to my cover letter, which is highlighted that what it refers to. And I know what it is. Sometimes it's this sense of impatience, this familiarity, this pattern coming back of not wanting to, what I call, like, do the work, evaluate why it is you feel the need to always be on a diet, and then kind of getting short and snappy and aggressive at other people. Now, I won't tolerate it. If you get short with me and aggressive with me once or twice, respect, everyone makes mistakes. But if it's a trend, gone, as far as I'm concerned. So most of the people I work with, 99.99%, are very open to change and very open to doing things a different way. They're wise people. A lot of people I have are so smart, so conscientious, so intelligent, and all they say is, I can't figure this part of my life out. And I get it, because there's parts of my life I'm still working on. So, it's just addressing the first assumption I'll always make, naively or intelligently, I haven't decided yet, is what potential trap in thinking are you currently in? Because dieting is unspectacular. A lot of the things I get told is like, I run a business, or I run a financial investing company. I'm all or nothing. I work 72 bazillion hours a week. I'm ready to go gung ho in nutrition. And I'm saying that the very traits that make you fantastic at business will make you a terrible dieter if you want to sustain it. You want to sustain it, yeah. You might have periods of more aggressive dieting, and that's perfectly fine. But your life can't be on and off this diet. It's not the same mentality. Yeah, you know that. So it depends. It really depends on the person. And it's part of the job I love the most, is the individual aspect, is really working with people as individuals.
What's the biggest misconception you come across when it comes to dieting?
I think it honestly just comes down to the idea that it's something that you kind of do or don't do. I'll have to get back into it, and with the greatest of
Oh, that
respect, into
phrase.
what? Yeah, into what? And I mean it with tremendous respect. I'll give you an example. It's a silly example, but it's a small one. I am going to travel in July. I was going to travel soon, and not leaving the country, inner Vietnam travel. And I'm going to travel with 8 friends. Now, somewhere a few years back, I used to be the guy who prepped all his food when he was going away. I no longer do that. I couldn't give a shit. But not for me. But if you do it, fantastic. Do your thing. Not for me. I'd rather go away and just have the Vietnamese street food and take the hit. And that's what works for me. It's my self-awareness. I know what I want. I eat 4 times a day. Every day, similar times, almost identical. The structure is almost autopilot. Most of the time, it's the same foods. When you think about it, you eat the same 10 to 15 foods every day anyway. And when I go away, that might change, but I still keep the structure. So I might say skip breakfast or whatever, maybe, depends where I am. But then I might go out for dinner and I might go out for lunch or whatever it is when I'm traveling. And that structure, even if I'm off by a couple of hundred calories, it's no big deal. The wheels, quote unquote, don't fall off. They don't. It's more of well, I know I eat 4 times a day. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to have for the next few days because I'm traveling. C'est la vie. What's the fear? And I want to know, what's the exact fear? And people say, well, I'll lose my structure. I'm like, so what's the exact fear? Gain 1 pound, gain 10 pounds, gain 100? Like, what exact thing are you fearing? For me, I know that every time I go on holiday, I come back 2 to 3 pounds heavier and very visibly so, because that's the life I live when I'm on holiday. And I'm okay with that. Yeah, exactly. And I'm perfectly fine with that. My best mate, Brian, preps every meal to the gram every day, all the time, no matter where he is. And he loves that. And that's power to him. So I encourage people to keep the mentality of the structure. If you're away on holiday, enjoy the ice cream cone after dinner. Big deal. And it sounds almost trivial, but I do think once you're in that kind of structure-based mindset, and it's not a diet mindset, it's structure, habit, routine, I just think it makes it a lot easier. So that I do find that being the biggest misconception personally, that it's something you need to be on or off. You're never on or off the budget per se. You accept Christmas, you overspend. January, you might save well. Birthdays, you go for a few pints and overspend. Saturday night out, you're generous with the card, ordering shots for all your mates. You're never like, oh, do you know what? I better get on the budget again on Monday. How do I throw away all my savings on Sunday and start saving again on Monday? No one ever does that because it's silly, but we do it with food. So that's probably certainly the bias that I have. The availability I have is on the plan, off the plan.
Yeah, that's a very good point, the way you say with the budget. Like, I think that's a brilliant way of putting it, because as you said, like, everyone needs money. So having it that way, like,
exactly, we can all relate.
Yeah.
We can all relate, can't we? And I think you'll probably know, we've all fallen into one or two of these diet traps ourselves in our younger years.
Yeah. Do you think people think you're immune from it because you're a PT?
100%. Until my clients open up to me and I tell them, for example, and I try not to ever turn the conversation back on me too much, but like, clients get very relieved when I tell them, and I'll be always honest, that yeah, I understand that struggle is one I've had. I remember one of my clients in person was like, I'd love to, when I'm doing my weight training on my Instagram stories, I might look a tiny bit more muscular than I am because I'm holding a dumbbell or a barbell, so the muscles are activated, and that can make you look more, say, toned, if you like, than you are. So I remember one of my girls one time, quite recently, said to me, I'd love to get rid of my tricep fat. And I said to her, it's going to be specifically difficult at your body fat to reduce that because you're lean, fit. She's like, no, but I have tricep fat. And I saw her shake and I said, everyone has that. And she's like, really? And then I lifted my arm and I shook my triceps and kind of they wobbled. She goes, oh my God, you do. And she started jiggling my tricep fat. And I was like, well, I'm still a human. Like, don't gloat about it. But people feel better when their trainers humanize situations. Not for the sake of it. I don't love this nonsense of like, oh, I have rolls when I sit down too, but I'm 7% body fat and had to find them. And I like legit. I like the real. I like when people are legit and real. I think you can tell when people are legit and real. But I do think humanizing problems in a very sincere way. I've had binge tendencies. I've had bulimia. I've had what I do believe now. If I was tested now in my younger years, I fit the bill of largely an eating disorder. I do believe that. Some kind of eating disorder. It was very debilitating. And I can relate a lot more than my clients think to a lot of the struggles that they go through. And what I've had a lot is because of the podcast, people work with me and I'll say, look, I'm not an eating behavior specialist. I'm not. and they'll say, I would rather have someone who's been through the war than someone who read about being in the war. And I've had a lady, you might have heard her on my podcast, you might not have. She was in food rehabilitation clinic for years. And then she heard me speak, and we chatted, and I made it very clear that I don't know if the service I offer is going to be beneficial to you. And she said, no, it's exactly what I need. I'm ready, and you're the person to help. And then she came away from those tendencies, and she had her life changed, and it was crazy. And she spoke on my podcast, and she's an incredible human. And that kind of feeling I can't put into words. I really can't. I don't know how to share with you the feeling when someone says you've changed my life for the better, that a specialist wasn't able to give me what you could give. And I will never step outside my lane, but I do think there's a real merit to, as long as you're transparent about it, not being an expert, but relating to someone's journey. And I've mates who are in therapy and counseling who have not clicked with their therapists because the therapists are qualified, but not life practitioners. And I've had mates that have clicked with their therapist based on the therapist's ability to have gone through shit, him or herself, and stand the test of time too. So I know it's probably controversial to be suggesting, qualifications aren't the be all end all, but I believe it.
But I think it is when you can relate and come out that you've had these struggles as well. People, I think, are more likely to gravitate towards you, aren't they? Because it's all well and good reading it all in a book, but if you've had all these problems, not say problems, but if you've had these experiences, you know how they're feeling.
And if you're self-aware enough to listen, but you can relate, I think it's a powerful combination. A lot of the times when I work with people, I won't jump in with answers, partly because I don't think I have the answers to anybody else's problem. Sometimes I'll give advice when I'm asked, but a lot of what they say I can directly relate to. It really does trigger and activate that part of me. It's like, yeah, I remember that feeling. I remember that hopeless feeling. I remember thinking I'd always be like this. I remember thinking there was no way out. I remember thinking I'd never have a good relationship with food. I remember thinking I'd never be able to control my weight without the obsessive tendency to exercise 3 times a day. I remember it all. And I never thought I'd feel like this at 31 years of age. Hell, I never thought I'd feel like it a couple of years back at 25 when I started to climb out of it. So I relate to a lot of it. And I get a bit emotional when certain people say certain things to me. But it's very assuring to people when I say, that's common and that's normal. It doesn't mean we should accept it, and it doesn't mean you can't get away from it, but it's very normal. And then some people say, I thought I was the only one. And then I might describe a situation one time where, I took 6 crunchy ice creams, 2 tubs of ice cream, and 6 pack of crunchies, 2 tubs of ice cream, and a bag of crisps into my room and sank it in 6 minutes. And people will say, oh my God, I would have never known that in you. And I say, yeah, it's because I, obsessively had to exercise it off then immediately. That was my way of dealing with it. So it's nice when you can normalize and humanize common everyday conundrums to a level where it's empowerment to change. Because I think society is trying to set up a society of soft, weak, pathetic losers right now. I think that is the aim of a lot of people. I know it's really controversial to say. I'm not judging anybody based on how they look or anything like that. I think there's a lot of push online to create a generation of extremely incapable people, emotionally weak, emotionally unintelligent, overly accepted. You're enough as you are. Incorrect. All my clients have said if I'd have given them that piece of advice when they needed to change, it would have been debilitating. You could be so much more, and you don't know how much you could be because you haven't tried. And I think that's so much more empowering. I really do. It's not that you don't deserve respect as you are, nothing like that. But imagine turning around to someone and, look, I'm really sad. I know I could be fitter. I feel really out of shape. I haven't exercised in 6 years. I haven't eaten a home-cooked meal in 2 years. Don't worry, you're fine as you are. What a disempowering message to send to someone. Instead, it's like, okay, you know internally you need to change. Let's come up with a plan together.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I think you're right. And also, this might be controversial, but everyone's offended by everything as well. That doesn't help.
Absolutely. But that's what happens when you condition people, in my opinion, to be. And I don't blame any one person for this. We live in a particularly good society overall. We've never had it better in the context. You soften people up, because I do think the human race is designed to look for problems. So if you don't have an immediate threat, you'll find one. You'll find problems. But I think we're soft and we're offended by everything. Do you know what? In ways, I'm kind of happy in a sense, because It's allowed people of average intellect and IQ like me to slightly get ahead. I think people who don't get offended get ahead. I do.
Yeah, that's true actually. Because you take stuff more on the chin, don't you? And you just
There's not as many barking dogs to stop and try and tame as if you're some, the only person in the world been affected by a couple of insults and some bad feelings. I know that sounds extremely cold. I don't mean it that way at all. I mean it in a way that if you're going to become the kind of person you're capable of being, you're going to have to develop a hierarchy of values. It's not because certain things aren't offensive. Many, many, many things are offensive. But it's because once you start to really hone in on what's important to you, you'll realize how impractical it is to pay attention. Like you could look me in the eye and think, Paul's an ugly fuckface. It's not a nice thing to hear. I don't have time to be offended by that. I have so much more going on in my day, so much more. I have a full client base and a full community who rely on say my leadership skills if they pay me. How could I possibly lose on one opinion of one person at any given time? And that's why I think we're being softened up. Like you're good as you are. Am I? But I don't feel it. And I have a feeling I could be more. What about advice to show me how to, silly as it sounds, Chrissy, but why not wake in the morning, take a shower, make yourself smell nice, look nice, make yourself presentable. But basically, there are certain small, little tiny promises you can start keeping to yourself every single day. And I do this. I keep small promises to myself every day. I drink water, 1 glass of water in the morning when I wake up. I promise to move my body, whether it's for 10 seconds or 40 million miles. And I always eat a nutrient-rich breakfast, or else push breakfast back. And there are 3 small promises I'll keep to myself 99.9999999% till the day I die. And they have life-changing effect. For over the next 10 years, that's 3,650 small promises. That's going to accumulate.
Yeah.
And I think that's how you start to become a better person. Then as I said, I don't know if you heard me, basically shower in the morning, make yourself look presentable, smell nice, have a nice haircut, have a nice, and that's personal. And I mean, like, to your style. Like, I don't mean look a certain way. I mean, be the most attractive version of your style. You can start to become a better person based on the little tiny habits you embody every single day. And I don't know why, but I do think it's like this societal determination to make us as weak and fragile and useless as possible.
Yeah. I think as well, like, do you ever, I've come across this with people who say are struggling, and I'm like, get up and brush your teeth. And they're like,
yeah,
but you go out and run I was running for a good while during the lockdown, and now I've gotten lazy again. But they'd be like, you do this all the time. And I'm like, yeah, well, it starts with brushing your teeth, so get up and do that first. Like, it's...
But I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I really couldn't agree more, because that's the kind of thing that sounds almost so easy, and then you forget to do it, and you realize the behavior is actually a difficult behavior to put into your daily routine. It sounds easy, but it's a lot nicer to convince yourself that tomorrow the day will be perfect than it is to go brush your teeth right now.
Yeah. Always looking for the perfect set of scenarios to do stuff.
I'm telling you. And I'm not sitting here, by the way, as someone who's figured this out and is perfect. I'm saying it as someone who actively has to stay on top of this, because I will deteriorate to being the smaller version of myself if I don't stay on top of these things.
No, I'm the same. Like, I started writing my schedule. Like, it's actually there on the whiteboard. Like, the whole way through lockdown, I made a point of getting up when my boyfriend had to get up and do work. Like, you see, he was in the office still, and I made a point of doing that, because if I let it slip, I start to feel worse. Like, and even days when I started to get lazy with it, I'd be like, oh, well, I kind of did that. Then I started to not feel as good about myself. So it really does work, these little things. And it could be as much as I've written on it, box breathing 5 minutes in the morning. Do you know what I mean? It's nothing, it doesn't have to be work out 3 times in a day.
One of my clients' small promises are 3 deep breaths in the morning, and I thought that was brilliant. What a way to connect yourself in the first thing. You can do that anywhere. If you go to prison, you can do it. One of my other clients then said she was going to go to bed at 9 p.m. every night without fail, and I remember saying, really, every night? So your wedding anniversary, you're out for a drink in Santorini, and you look at the clock and it's 5 to 9. It's like, oh, bedtime.
Yeah.
That's not practice. You have to be real with these promises. They have to be small, doable, bite-sized, sustainable. But I think they have an ability to. They almost seem so small that they're not worth doing. But cumulatively, I think they're powerful.
Yeah. Do you know the one as well, making your bed? That one is just such a simple one, but actually every time I do it in the morning, I'm like, yeah, I did that.
You own the day first thing in the morning. There's a reason. So that's worldwide, man. That's a
Yeah.
common
Oh, definitely. Like I
one,
heard it from
and
somewhere
I
else
get
and I
it.
started doing it because I never used to do it. Like I've only started doing this in the last year, and now still, like if I've done nothing all day, I'm like, yeah, I did that.
100%. It's the first task in the morning, and it's done right.
Yeah. What is your biggest bugbear on the industry? Like what do you think is the most kind of maybe frustrates you the most?
I don't put much attention onto it. I
Yeah.
honestly don't. I would rather pay attention to what I can change positively about it. I don't think me cribbing or bitching and moaning makes any difference. I'd rather take any good energy that I have and try and channel it towards progress,
Yeah.
because I do think as soon as you point the finger outwards, you forget momentarily to point that thumb back in. And I do think that's where problems stem, is a lack of personal responsibility. Are there things that irritate me? Of course, but charlatanism, people taking advantage of people, false claims, all the stuff you'd expect, to be honest. But I think I do think you fight the battle with your actions and not your words. I
Yeah.
believe that, and that's kind of more what I choose to put my attention into it. So I don't have one directly that comes to mind. They definitely exist, but
Well, one thing I
yeah,
noticed a while ago actually was I actually thought all the diet culture and all the charlatanism stuff was going away. And it was only like it took several months for me to realize that it's like literally I only follow people that I think will give me legitimate information. And that's why I thought it was gone away. But I realized they're all still out there because I get the odd Facebook ad being like, you're into fitness, do this body type diet. And I'm like, I'm not into fitness like that. The reason I don't follow these pages.
yeah. Uh,
This is kind of cool
the
when you
If
notice
I
that,
was
like,
to say
yeah,
one thing I would like, that I think a lot of my bugbears would be completely reducing, gone away. Um, if we were better at critical thinking, we wouldn't fall prey to this body type. That basically, if someone makes a claim to you, if someone makes a claim, the burden of proof is on them to prove the claim, not on you to prove that it's not. So if I say to you, say, Santa is real, it's not on you to prove that's not true. It's on me to prove it's true, or we can assume it's not.
mm,
And I think if we had better training and were taught more to critical think, that nonsense will go out of business. Because someone says body type quiz, and it's like, oh, what evidence? What evidence have you got for a body type quiz? Oh, the macro ratio should be this. Oh, based on what? What population? Whom? How long was the studies? What group? What group size? What controls? This claim will do this massive thing. Any evidence for that statement, or what are you basing that on? Like, anything at all?
yeah,
You will see a lot, because we all fall into the trap, I think, of believing, like, you'll see people, maybe cut a particular food or something like that from their diet, and get good results, and then they believe that instead of the reduction of calories, it was the removal of a certain food. And
mm,
then they're like, oh, well, I never ate carbs and I lost a load of weight, so no one should eat carbohydrates. And then I might say to you, oh, Chrissy, don't eat fruit because it's a carbohydrate. And I'll say, oh, what does that do? Oh, it increases calories. What quantity precisely? What quantity? What exact quantity? And how much should I not eat? And all carbs? Some carbs? What about my calories? What about if it fits my calories? What if I eat carbohydrates and I'm still in a deficit? What about if I eat one meal a day and it's predominantly carbohydrates, but it's 500 calories? Is it fattening then? Well, no, but what? What even is fattening? Is fattening a term? I do think throwing these kinds of questions at people offering ridiculous claims, if you don't understand it simply and practically speaking, then it's likely that it's not particularly true. And I do think you can watch the mental gymnastics that goes on with people. And that's why, again, I think I do so well with my client base, is I take very complex topics and principles and I break it down into a very easy to understand manner. But the
yeah,
one ingredient I'm sprinkling on top of all their lovely heads is the fairy dust of patience. And if they don't accept that fairy dust of patience, then there's no relationship to be had, because you're not burning 50 pounds of body fat in 9 days. You're not.
no.
You need that scientific process of however long it's going to do so.
I do like asking them why. If they ask, they could say, "Oh, you can't eat that." Like, "Oh, I've eaten so badly." Or, "What did you have?" "Oh, I had pasta." "And why is that bad?" Um,
And sometimes you'll find, you probably know that you might say why, and people will have a kind of like a sound bite information, but it still doesn't provide any evidence for why it would be bad. It's just, well, it's a, it's a carbohydrate. That doesn't prove that it's bad. That just, all it does is defines the word. And are carbohydrates bad? They're the same calories per gram as protein. Are proteins good? Why are proteins good and carbs bad? Could it be that they do two different roles in the body? Are 5 €1 coins bad and 5 note is good? How is this working out? I'm quite a curious person, and I try and keep them down to simple analogies just to get people a bit more focused on the things that really matter.
yeah. No, it's true. Like, it's a good way of saying it. Like, a 5 €1 coin's worse than thing. Back to the money. Always the money.
It's relatable, and we can all
Yeah.
relate.
No, it's brilliant. Okay, so I think that is most of what I have to ask you, except with the exception of my last little one, which is, what is the best advice you've ever been given?
I think the one that comes to mind immediately when I was young is my dad said, say yes or say no, but never say no. Pardon, but never say yes and do it begrudgingly. I think that was the one that landed. Say yes or say no, but never say yes begrudgingly. And even though I was very young when he said it, boundaries. That's what I think it was teaching me, boundaries. I think
Yeah,
that's why I've quite a strong ability to say yes and to say no. Boundaries.
that's a very good one, actually. Don't say yes, but and do it begrudgingly. Need to get.
Yeah, it's been a good one for me. I have one other one as well. It's
Yeah.
not really a piece of advice, but it is a bit of an anecdote. When I was young, again, it comes from my dad. When I was young, my dad was telling me that he was getting on the Dublin bus and it was raining, and someone said, "Rotten old day, dirty old day." And my dad said, I think it was my dad that said it, or else he overheard the driver say it, one or the other. Basically, yeah, but sure, the blind man would still rather see it. And there was something about the power in the way he said it that just made me think, don't complain. Don't even passively complain. Don't small talk complain. Don't actually complain. Don't complain. And there were powerful lessons that I think have stayed with me for life.
Yeah,
Boundaries and no complaining.
that's a good one, actually, because people do love complaining, don't they?
I think it's a very autopilot thing many of us do. And I actually don't think a lot of us realize how fortunate life and privileged we are in many ways. I hate the word privilege for what it's become. But
Yeah.
if you remove the connotations from the social justice warrior kind of person, a lot of us have the fact that getting angry about the wrong coffee order is your highest stress today is a really beautiful life to have. And I think a lot of people have really got that backwards.
Yeah, I agree. Do you know Mark Manson's book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck? They talk
I've
about
never
that
read
a
it,
lot.
but I know it.
Yeah, got it on Audible, went through it in a day, but it's like, basically that's one of the points being, it's like, you don't really have a lot if that's what you're giving a fuck about something like that. Like, you
Yeah,
don't have a lot
yeah,
of worries
absolutely.
if that's your biggest problem.
It's so true, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a brilliant one. Just before you go, Paul, as well, where can everybody find you?
Sure, head over to Instagram, Paul Dermody PT. I have a podcast, which is quite sporadic. And yeah, they're probably the two places that I would say hi, reach out. Not the best man on the planet for keeping on top of his DMs, but I'll try and get back. And that's where you can get me.
Deadly. And then always, as ever, everyone, you can still find me on Instagram and TikTok at Chrissy H Fitness. And I heard Paul's going to be starting it soon. He's mad for it to start TikTok.
Only if you do the dances or whatever it is, the TikTok dances.
Oh my God, that's the one thing I can't do. I'm literally too left feet. It's ridiculous.
I'll think of the content, but you'll dance and do the quirky hand things.
The quirky hand things, but that one, I can do that one.
Yeah, that's what I've got. I've only seen a couple of TikToks from Instagram, but it's not a world I'm delving into. Not
Yeah,
yet. I don't need more social media time.
that's true. You never need more.
I don't have the same je ne sais quoi that you do to go and own TikTok. So I'm good. I'm good hanging out on Instagram, hiding behind my republished tweets onto Instagram.
Hey, if it works, it works.
So far, so good.
Thank you again for listening to the Why Not podcast. It really means a lot that you are listening in, and I would love if you could please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or subscribe on Spotify. And always, I'd love to hear feedback personally, so if you do want to leave me a message and let me know how you found the podcast, please do.